Hello. Welcome to Be Holding with Ross Gay, a program in the all-virtual Virginia Festival of the Book. I'm Jane Kulo, Director of the Virginia Center for the Book, a program of Virginia Humanities. Thanks for joining us. A couple of notes before I hand the program over to our speakers. Please share your questions using the Q&A tab on Zoom. This event has optional closed captioning, which you can turn on and customize using the closed captions tab at the bottom of your window. If you haven't already read today's book, you're in for a treat, and we hope you will. For details about how to buy it from our bookseller for this event, M. Revac and Company, visit vabook.org, where you can also explore our full schedule and watch past events. While you're there, please consider making a donation to support the festival's ongoing work at vabook.org/give. Many thanks to our community partners, the Bridge Progressive Arts Initiative and the Muse Writers Center for sharing information about this event. We also greatly appreciate the support of all festival sponsors, donors, and community partners. Now I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Ross Gay is the author of 4 books of poetry: Be Holding, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, Bringing the Shovel Down, and Against Which. He published a collection of essays, The Book of Delights, in 2019, and he teaches poetry at Indiana University. And our moderator today is Kaveh Akbar, the author of Calling a Wolf poems, and the forthcoming collection, Pilgrim Bell. Kaveh has received honors such as a Levis Reading Prize and multiple Pushcart Prizes. Born in Tehran, he teaches at Purdue University and in low residency programs at Warren Wilson and Randolph Colleges. Thank you all for joining us today. Kaveh and Ross, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jane, and thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Ross, for being here.
Thank you, Kaveh. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I'm so excited about this. I've been looking forward to this for a minute. We're here talking about this book, Ross's new Be Holding. Buy 30 copies for all your friends. Buy some copies for your enemies. It'll make them better. How are you? Where are you, in Bloomington?
I'm in Bloomington. Yep, I'm in the little studio. I can't remember. I don't know if you came through here when you read here last. You read at
the studio
across town. Yeah. So next time, this is a little classroom studio situation space we have, but it's a library, print shop, etc.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you? Where are you?
I am in beautiful, sunny West Lafayette, Indiana. I'm actually going to Indy later today, so we'll be sort of in the middle. I'm seeing one of your students, Bernardo.
Oh, cool. Oh, good.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm going to Indy later. But yeah, I'm in West Lafayette. I'm specifically in my our guest room of our house, which is where my spouse allows me to put up our tacky basketball ephemera. We have a Zoom room that is like more properly, or like not a Zoom room, but like it's actually in our kitchen, but like there's like a wall that makes us look like real professional people. And like sometimes if I'm trying to be like, but I felt like given the subject matter here, the tacky basketball ephemera room might actually be the perfect place to be doing this,
Perfect.
Yeah. So I want to get into it. But first, so for those who haven't read the book, I'm dubious of aboutness when talking about texts in general, and I don't want to flatten this book to saying it is about basketball or it is about Dr. J, because it isn't. There is that is like one of the sort of like protons in the nucleus of the atom of this book, you know what I mean? But like the book begins ostensibly by orbiting this transcendent moment of genius by this basketball player named Julius Erving, the genius of his like fingertips and of his legs and of his arms, and and it orbits this moment. So I thought maybe we could begin by actually looking at that moment and then having you read for a minute, and then we can get into sort of talking around it. Does that sound okay?
Yes, I love that you said the word orbit. It has not been a word that's come through for me yet. It's such a good word.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, I mean, anyone, I mean, I'm sure that many of the people here have read this book, and like, I don't know, like it is not a book about basketball. Like I think that, or if it is a book about basketball and like literally everything else. You know what I mean? Like it is a book in which basketball is like one of the many foils, or one of the many sort of synapses which across language and experience and memory fires, right? But it's sort of like orbiting that, but it touches everything else. But we'll get more into that. Right now, I want to share this clip around which, like I said, some of the, especially like the first like 20 or 25 pages specifically kind of orbit this moment. From the NBA Finals, the Sixers playing the Lakers, and I'm just gonna. Oh, okay, hold on. I have to do the Zoom thing. Okay, you can see my screen now.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be like some talking heads talking about, but it'll show it. But I think it's cool to like have like Magic talking about it. But like it's like 1 minute long. I'm sure you've seen this particular.
He did a move, which is the all-time greatest move I've seen. Magic and I were sitting there, and we were sitting right on the baseline. And when Dr. J left his feet, he didn't know what he was going to do. When we cut him off baseline, he started walking in air. Got the ball in one hand. And we said, wait a minute, he's got to come down. There's no way he can stay in the air that long. And he was just in the air.
It's 89-84, Sixers, and they get inside. Unbelievable. Julius Erving. Big John with the ball. Finds Julius Erving. Drives to the basket, goes up and... Listen to the fan. Watch this fantastic move by the doctor. Julius in the air, palming with the right hand. Floating, reaching, and spinning it in. Incredible. Doctor.
All right. I mean, it goes on, but just to give the viewers who haven't had the great privilege of experiencing that yet, the experience of, and then I'll cede the floor to you
Cool.
to read.
So I'll read for the like kind of the little beginning of the poem. That's so beautiful. Thank you for doing that. I have this little thing at the beginning of the book where I say like it's an about Dr. J, and the point of that is to let people know, because some people nowadays don't know who Dr. J is. And so now you know a little bit. So thank you for that. But there's a bound in gratitude that begins this poem and ends this poem and is this poem. This poem does not exist without the work and ideas and words of many, many writers and thinkers. Among them, Amiri Baraka, Garnet Cadigan, Toy Derricotte, Aracelius Girmay, Saidiya Hartman, Alan Iverson, Fred Moten, Kevin Quashie, Patrick Rosal, Christina Sharp, and Susan Sontag. By which I mean the work and thinking and care and words are indebted to them and are sometimes actually theirs. And there's an epigraph. And the epigraph is from Christina Sharp's book, In the Wake, on Blackness and Being. And the quote is, to be held, to behold. Beholding. And you might have noticed there's nowhere to go. The wind cutting little eddies at your collarbones and behind your ear as Dr. J drives from the foul line extended to the baseline, defended valiantly by Mark Landsberger, who in this poem, despite the doofy urge to make him so, is not allegorical, but is rather simply a hardworking journeyman ball player with decent athleticism and size and a floppy mop of dusty blonde hair, got caught up in the gust, sliding his size 16s quick so that Doc, after catching the ball at the elbow and taking one hard dribble toward the baseline, where the dunk would usually commence, could not access the paint or the lane or the key, which is what we call the area nearest the goal, which in this case is an iron hole drawn in space, and therefore implies a window, though the key makes it also a door that Landsberger, it seemed, was trying to keep shut. And so Doc left. He left his feet, which means more or less jumping with nowhere to go, and which were warned against by coaches from day one for the ensuing requisite stupid pass, or more simply, though no less stupid, travel. also called walking, which the leaping often leads to. Keep your feet again and again, which makes the leaving your feet sound sacrificial. The way in certain places, certain countries or countries inside of countries, you must leave by foot with nowhere to go, which there is. And Doc, you should note after the one dribble clasps the ball with only his right hand without once at all in any shape or form using the left, which among other things, friends, differentiates this move from all the descendant moves. Kevin Durant, Dwayne Wade, Steph and Giannis and Harden and Kawhi. Yes, Bron too, I shall not be moved. And using only one hand, which is amazing, but not yet miraculous, more a genetic and therefore physical fact, thanks Ma and Pa Erving, Doc's hand becomes an octopus, gripping the ball, nothing like prey. And with that ball snug in his mitt, Doc maybe kind of sort of thought something like, I'm gonna put this schmuck, the schmuck in this case being Landsberger, though do not please revert to a simplistic allegorization of the journeyman, which word I repeat advisedly, on a poster. Though schmuck is a word I'd be surprised to hear Doc say. And the word posterize, common usage, posterize his ass, you might be thinking is a bit of an anachronism in this poem, in this move, which ostensibly occurred in the 1980 NBA Finals, though we all know that nothing happens only when it happens. We all know that nothing happens only when it happens. Emerging more in the epic, which in the NBA lasts 3 to 5 years, following Doc's retirement. Neek and Jordan, Hakeem the Dream and Clyde the Glide, Barkley the Glove, and yo, remember Sean Kemp? Though Doc probably thought it anyway, visionary that he was, when will they verb what I keep doing to these schmucks, especially Bill fucking Walton, driving from the foul line extended toward the baseline as the unsuspecting Landsberger, who did a fine job of shuffling his size 16s and not holding, keeping Erving from the key, and who must for a scant and fleeting moment have felt a degree of pride when Doc, after the hard dribble right, left his feet with nowhere to go. Billy Cunningham on the sideline, his hands on his hips, his sport coat thrown open, a few strands of hair stuck to his moist pink brow, and almost smiling as Doc began sailing out of bounds over the baseline. And Landsberger, a solid leaper, skied and foreclosed the possibility of Doc sneaking a shot in this side of the basket, by which I mean dunking probably quite hard by putting his hand against the backboard, a big door swinging shut, at which fine and commendable defensive effort, Erving simply decided in the air to knock on other doors by soaring more. Have you ever decided anything in the air? And maybe I'll pause there. Thank you.
I love it so much. I love it so much. That have you ever decided anything? I think at some point I texted you like a John Morant clip of like
Yes.
him. That was like that reminded me of that, because it was just like he I think he like threw it off the backboard because his teammate was suddenly covered when he went up in the air, and he did.
He just caught it.
Yeah, and I'm the thing that I bring to the basketball court is being 6'4" and being like a real glue guy, you know what I mean? Like I have like an 8-inch vertical, you know what I mean? Like I've never decided anything in the air, so I really appreciate that that moment. I have so much that I want to sort of talk about and ask about, and I know that we have a limited amount of time here in this sort of box together, though we're babies in this universe and we'll live forever. But one of the things that I am really interested in is, like, again, you sort of you repeat the nothing happens only when it happens. You repeat that a couple times, right? And that's sort of like a through line for the text, right? It's like you have these like tiny ephemeralnesses or whatever, you know, like these tiny little treasure moments that are a couple seconds long, right? But that, you know, whether it be Dr. J sort of flying, or whether it be your great grandfather standing in a doorway with your great great grandmother, you know, like these tiny tiny moments, and then you blow them up, right? They become these ornate tapestries or these murals, right? You do, and this isn't sort of like local to this book, like Two Bikers Embrace on Broad Street is like, you know, it's like the time that it takes like two people to do this, but like a whole, you know. So I was wondering maybe if you could talk a little bit about just that, you know, the way that I don't know, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but like the way that something like this lets you make a moment not a moment.
That's
you know,
so good. Yeah, that it's funny, like even that specific connection, the sort of whatever is happening in this Beholding book to like that Two Bikers Embrace on Broad Street, or like you're pointing to something that I didn't quite realize was a feature maybe of something that's interesting to me, but like it is very interesting to me, the small moment, or the thing that you maybe look at quickly and then you go on. There is something really moving to me about not looking on, but to just like look at it and look at it and look at it and maybe stretch it out. I think there's probably some kind of sense or understanding or argument or belief that, like that statement, that recurring statement that nothing happens only when it happens, that inside of a moment that you can kind of, that happens like that inside of that moment is a kind of cosmos of events, you know, a cosmos of happenings that a kind of study or a kind of persistent looking will allow us to have. And maybe inside of any given moment, I'm just sort of, that's a good question, you know, and I wonder if part of the idea is that inside of a moment, like a really meditated upon moment, is sort of an opportunity to sort of, you know, witness, you know, is an opportunity to sort of witness a kind of entanglement of moments, you know. Like we often think of moments as discrete, you know, just like we often think of people as discrete, or, you know, the bird flying as discrete, or the wind as discrete. But I wonder if there's some kind of argument. I think there's an argument about time for sure, like an argument about time being sort of moving in all directions and holding everything. But I wonder if that desire is something about like, you know, you think Dr. J did this thing in 1980, and maybe, you know, you think you weren't born then, but maybe you were, you know, maybe you were. And maybe Dr. J was actually part of your birth, you know, something like that, you know, I don't know, something like that. It's a beautiful question.
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, that's like everywhere apparent in the book, and the idea of witnessing, I mean, another refrain from later in the book is the idea of like witnessing the unwitnessable, right? And that is sort of almost like the tether, or like the, you know, I think a lot of people when they talk about your work talk about wonder, and they talk about that in a value positive way, like it, like the wonder of, you know, photosynthesis happening, you know, that plants take light from a star 93 million miles away and turn it into matter, you know, turn it into something that you can put on a scale and weigh. It's like fucking nuts, you know, and that's something that you know, and that sort of wonder is everywhere apparent in your work. But witnessing the unwitnessable, I think also is like the sort of tether between that sort of wonder and also like the wonder at the other side, right? Like the book's sort of obsession with loot, right? Or the way that the book thinks about you know, those are also profound occasions for bewilderment, you know, like why should some have so much when others have so little, right? You know, you think about like Gwendolyn Brooks's Beverly Hills, Chicago, or something like that, right? Like, how does such, like, it is an occasion of profound wonder or bewilderment that we are capable of being so cruel to each other historically, despite our overwhelming sameness as a species. You know what I mean? Like these are also things that this poem and a lot of your work, but this poem is wondering at and marveling at, right? And like the idea of witnessing the unwitnessable, you know, what Dr. J does, you know, he flies, right? And like the sort of, you know, the genius of his arms and, you know, all of these things, you know, and the unprecedentedness and of the moment was like witnessing the unwitnessable. But so was the people falling from the building, right? And these are iterations of witnessing the unwitnessable too. I'm trying to like frame this into a question.
Let me go a little bit with it, because yeah, that's, I mean, even as you're starting to raise it, it's beautiful to me, because I'm like, there's two things, like the way you phrased it makes me think, right, in a certain kind of way, there is what we would, what we, I think in our, like, wise soul selves would consider something the unwitnessable, meaning the profoundly brutal and the inconceivably brutal. And then there's like the witnessing the unwitnessable, meaning something about the kinds of witnessing that require a certain kind of practice, like the witnessing of Dr. Part of what that thing is trying, this book I think is trying to do is like, one of the things, like I'm going to orbit this impossible instance of flight, this impossible instance of beauty and genius. I'm going to orbit it, and I'm going to witness it so much. I'm going to see it so much. Maybe to the extent that I'm going to realize like its beauty is unwitnessable. This act of genius, this act, which is a descendant act of genius. It is not like Dr. J is the first. He's the recipient of all of these. Like it was bestowed upon him too, and maybe part of the, like, this is good, like part of the thing is like witnessing the unwitnessable. There is all of this unwitnessable that we are sort of, a proliferation of the unwitnessable that we can just like click on, and it just, we just see it and we don't even mean to see it. And then there's all of this unwitnessable that we don't necessarily practice at witnessing. And that would be, among the things that might be, is that, in the 1980 NBA finals, there was a dude who like jumped from far away and did something that was actually impossible. And it was a flight, and it was, it was an act of genius, and it was an act of care, and it was an act of reaching. And it was one of my buddies here, Scott, who we kind of work in this space together. He was like, Doc doesn't quite fly out of bounds, but he almost flies out of bounds. And out of bounds and out of bondage are these things. And so I feel like that one of the practices of this book is about like it's never occurred to me, but that the unwitnessable is also what we do not yet know how to see. And so, you know what I mean? And that we want to see, and that we want to practice it.
And we see you practicing. I mean, like that, like the whole I'm leery of speaking in excited generalities, but like one of the whole sort of like miracles of poetry is to like witness an act of cognition that then sort of like allows you to experience that, like or like a parallel act of cognition, right? And so like we're seeing you practicing seeing, you know what I mean? And in a culture, a moment, whatever, that seeks to sort of cudgel us into inaction with like an overwhelming onslaught of images, right? And just like that is, if we have like on our phones you have like a Hardee's ad, and then a autoplay song or whatever, and then you see like a literal like snuff film of like state murder of a civilian, right? And then it's just like a Hardee's ad after that, right? And that's teaching you to like not witness, you know what I mean? Like that's training your brain to like not be able to see that thing that is sandwiched in the middle, right? And in this we see you practicing witnessing, right? We see you practicing that sort of like orbital movement around and around and around these images, whether the image be Dr. J, or this image of, you know, the two women in the parking lot, or the image of, you know, your great grandfather and your, which is on the cover of the book, in Osceola, Arkansas. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, and in so doing, you're like, there's a way in which it's undoing some of that like cudgeling damage of empire, right? Like we are now becoming more alert and capable of processing those images, right? And in that way, like the granular act of your own practice is like extended outwards to the reader, and it's a real sort of generosity and a gift, right? You're gifting sight, right? You're gifting the ability to perceive and to feel again, you know. There are a few Q&A questions, and I don't want to neglect everyone else in my sort of zeal.
Hey, can I just real quick like celebrate your zeal? So one of the things early when my book, I think right around when it came out, or shortly before, Kaveh sent these things in the mail, these beautiful cards of Dr. J. These came in the mail. I was like, are you kidding me?
They're amazing, right?
They're amazing. They're amazing. And that brought me so much joy.
Yeah, they belonged with you. They clearly belonged with you. Yeah, no, if you could see, if I could like just, if I panned around this room right now, you know, it would like completely just embarrass me with like pounds and stacks and stuff of just basketball cards and tacky basketball ephemera. And my spouse is such a good sport because they couldn't care less about any of it, and I'm just allowed to have my little like 12-year-old boy room here, where it's great. Okay, let's see. I will start with this one. Allison Tharp asks, why did you decide to make the entire poem one single sentence? Super impressive. It's actually, there are a few moments where like when you're reminding us to breathe, you know, like there are a few moments that actually interrupt the sentence with like little sort of sandwich sentence in the middle. But yeah, a lot of it is single sentences or single.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, there was a way that I wanted the poem over the course of the writing of the poem, and also these conversations I was having. I was in a class with a writer and a theologian and a buddy here, J. Cameron Carter, and he was talking about, we were just in a class, we were reading Nathan Mackey and Eminor Basie Phillip and some other stuff, and we were talking about grammar. And in the course of that, I think it was in the course of that, is that right? Do I have this right? Anyway, I feel like maybe, anyway, time moves in many directions at once. I feel like that semester made me know that I wanted to unsentence the poem, you know? So there was a period at the end, but I wanted to unsentence it. So have a grammatical action that kind of unsentenced the thing. And furthermore, you know, right now in the book, it says, you know, it starts as though it's the beginning of a sentence. You might have noticed there's nowhere to go, but I've changed that. And now it's end, it's a lowercase a, and you might have noticed. So it's so that it partly, I think one of the things that I want to do is that although there is a kind of date thing beneath it, which maybe is not right, I wanted the poem to sort of extend both ways in time. So that was sort of the thing. And I could kind of theorize about, I mean, the word sentence, to unsentence something, you understand that. But I think there's some kind of argument about even some kind of argument probably about the form itself, which is, in addition to an orbiting, it's a kind of digressive orbiting. And there's something that feels maybe not accurate to the process of the experience. Just like saying the poem's finished feels inaccurate to the process of the thing. And even in the acknowledgements, like my intention is to, you know, I talk about that the poem, you know, after reading Christina Sharp's book, In the Wake, I changed the title of the poem to Beholding. But there's another title of the poem, and the title is Flight. and so those things in the acknowledgement, I sort of allowed that revision to happen. And I also, toward the end of the poem, I say, we're talking about destroying the world for the world. Again, in Jay's class, it became clear to me that what I meant is we're talking about destroying the world for the earth. And so that both things are sort of happening, and it's still happening, you know, like the poem is being revised as we speak. So there's some kind of like way that I'm thinking about that, but that's kind of an answer to that sentence question.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love the idea of beginning it with the and, like the sort of like in the middle of an ongoing conversation, which the book very much feels like. And for those of you who have the book, make sure you do read the acknowledgements, because it's one of the best parts of the book. I mean, every part of the book is one of the best parts of the book, but it's great. The acknowledgements are great. This question sort of ties into what you were talking about the sharp and the name. I think when you first mentioned that you were working on this book to me in Bloomington one time, I think it was called Flight, and then it came out and it was called something, you know. So it's interesting. But this question from Salem says, would love to hear more about the relationship to sharp, wake work, and Black Mourning.
Yeah. You know, what I can say is that that book put a couple things into this poem. One of the things that it put in there was the wake, I think, in a sort of this, in the way that Christina Wake is talking about. The wake being the sort of the, you know, the I'll try, you know, to quote Saidiya Hartman in a way, like the afterlife of slavery. The wake, what exists in the wake, we are in the wake of that. The afterlife is the wake. And the wake work is a sort of, as I understand it, the sort of, I don't quite want to say that which emerges beautifully despite, but in some kind of way, I do want to say that too, like in the midst of. But in a way, the book's also arguing with that, you know, and the book is arguing because the book is actually trying to transform the hold of the ship into these other things. So there's this way that the poem is a kind of wake work, and the kind of wake work that it's trying to be is a kind of wake word that that destroys the hold, actually. You know, it wants to, it's trying to destroy the hold. So it's engaging with that kind of question. And what was the third part? It was like the wake work and Black Mourning?
Black Mourning, yeah, M-O-U-R. And
yeah.
Though you can answer it M-O-R-N too, if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a way, I guess the book is an act of, yeah, maybe I'll say it like this, like the book is an act of Black mourning, I would say, on all kinds of levels, on all kinds of ways, like on a very sort of, you know, in terms of the sort of brutalities that we can, you know, the afterlife of slavery, et cetera. Also the mournings of you know, beloveds who are no longer here and who are in the poem though, and so they are here. Which is to say that I wonder if it's kind of mourning, and maybe this is Black mourning, or an instance of Black mourning, because it means to also be celebration, and it means also to be a mourning that is not only mourning, a mourning that is like, that is, you know, at the end of the book where the poem sort of says, like, we're talking about the reaching that makes a falling flight. And that as a kind of mourning, you know, mourning that is not isolating, but mourning that is a kind of reaching toward, you know, and so which then to me leads to what I sort of think of as joy. And joy to me is, you know, the way I think of it is that it's grave. Joy is a kind of emotional state, or whatever you call it, that emerges out of our understanding of, you know, sorrow or death, you know, the grave. And so that joy and mourning are, you know, sort of mutually constitutive things, like they do not exist without one another. And I think this book is trying to sort of wonder about that in a deep way. This book is trying to wonder about how in the midst of such profound mourning, one, it's trying to be in the midst of profound mourning. It's trying to do that, I think. And I think it's trying also to be like, to wonder how in the midst of mourning in itself is a kind of renovation, a space for renovation, something like that, you know. Yeah.
I love the word renovation there. That's beautiful. And I mean, and that's so much of, again, I keep accidentally getting excited and speaking in generalities, but I feel like that's so much of what you're up to broadly is like, again, I feel like sometimes people talk about your work and like, I just want to like, I want to be like, yeah, but like, didn't you see the part where, you know, like where
I know. I know.
Like they talk about you as if like, well, they talk about your work, and they talk about the joy and they talk about the gratitude, but like, it's like joy made wise by profound sorrow, you know, and gratitude made wise by profound loss, you know, and that is essential, you know, that is like at the atomic core of like all of this, you know, is that the moments of joy and celebration are inextricably linked. And there's a part that really stuck out to me, or sticks out to me in this book too, the part about I too am a docent in the Museum of Black Pain, right? And that's something that I think a lot of marginalized writers, and certainly, you know, I can't speak for Black writers, but certainly it's something that I think a lot of marginalized writers in various ways think about, is like the way that American literary or American aesthetic appetite sort of increases in proximity to the artist's nearness to state violence, you know, like the way that, you know, I can speak for my case, like the way that like the interest in my work palpably changed after the immigrant ban, right? After Iran was like added to the immigrant ban list and after 45 was elected, and, you know, the way that, and there's a way in which I don't know exactly how to articulate this, but I feel like you're getting at it in this moment too. There's a way in which people will consume work that like sort of says like a bad thing about empire, work that is critical of empire in some way, and people will consume that work and it allows them to vent some of their responsibility, or it allows like a certain way of like venting their complicitness, right? And there's a way in which sort of naming that, as you are kind of doing in this passage, or as, you know, as a lot of us are trying to think about how to do, there's a way in which naming that, I think, resists giving the reader that opportunity to vent by saying like, I'm aware of what's happening here, right? And like you're gonna have to do more than just sort of like sit in this and like feel like you've done what you needed to do, right? You're not inoculated against your own badness by having participated in this exchange, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's
and
sort of
neither-
the thing. Yeah, I mean, with the, go ahead.
No, I was just, and neither am I by having written it. Sorry, that's what.
Yeah, exactly. And and there is this kind of it's like a pressure of legibility or something, and legibility to whom, you know,
legibility to empire.
Yeah. And so there's all these kind of constraints even about like how we see oneself, and how oneself might be, you know, on account of that, imagine oneself as being seen or want to be seen, because there's a kind of legibility that, you know, like you said, like one's proximity, a certain groups. If you are not proximate to violence, you become invisible in a certain kind of way, and that is a brutality. That is a brutality, you know. To our imaginations, to, you know, the whole thing. And so, yeah, that's I think that is, and that it's just sort of negotiating oneself in the world, and maybe oneself as as a writer, or oneself who's sort of making, whatever you call it, art, and like material for consumption. It's like, to me, it's a worrisome condition, and part of the practice is to be in community with people who are like, this is a worrisome condition. Let's take care of take care of each other in this.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, the sort of like purity or clarity or vision towards which we aspire is horizontal, right? It's like you march towards it forever and you never actually get there, right? But it's like marching and then like looking to your left and right and seeing people marching next to you that like sort of keeps you good, or keeps you whatever good means in the moment that we're in, right?
Good meaning trying. Good meaning trying.
Good meaning trying. I love that. Yeah, good meaning trying. Good meaning like marching towards that horizon. Yeah, and in motion. We're coming up on time, and there are a few questions still. I like this one. Andrew asks, the syntax and structure of the poem sometimes feels like a game or game movement. Do you feel that way when you're writing, that the form of the poem moves the reader through something kinesthetic and kin to basketball?
That's beautiful. No, I wasn't thinking about it. But that's so great. There are all of these things, in writing this book and working on some other stuff and writing about basketball, that have made me be thinking really hard about how basketball, like syntaxes of basketball, and more like what the sort of sociality of basketball and the ways that basketball itself is a kind of, and I'm always talking about like pickup basketball. I'm never talking about basketball with like coaches and stuff. I'm always talking about real basketball. How it's there is a kind of movement and syntax and yearning and asking, but I had not ever thought of the syntax of this poem having explicitly to do with like the syntax of a game, or though if I had a little bit more time, I could start to probably tell you how it is.
Give me like 5 minutes. Yeah. No, I love that though. Have you been so I mean, I think that we share a practice, or maybe I play basketball with, I think one of the grad students with whom I play a weekly game of pickup is in attendance today, but we haven't been able to do it in quarantine, because. So what have you done to Paige and I built a hoop in our front yard, and so we have a hoop now.
Good move.
It's been like, my jumper is like amazing, and everything else about my game is like completely eroded.
See,
it's like all I can do now.
Yeah, because I haven't.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I haven't been out, but I was just at McDowell, this writing residency, and I was there for 3 weeks. And there's a nice big empty room, so I rolled the rug up. And I brought my basketball with me. So every day, oh my God, it was so good. So
you're like Kyrie with the handles now.
I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you, like my sham god is beautiful. Like I was working on all this stuff.
Oh my God.
It's unreal. But we'll see what it's like when I'm actually running up and down the court, which I have not done.
Yeah, well, and when there's someone like defending you too.
I know. Like on that like invisible person, I'm very good.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, that's like me practicing my post moves on like the air. It's like no one can stop,
you're up and under, like flying by.
Yeah, listen, I'm a monster, I'm like, I've got the Dr. J thing on lock by myself, like in the driveway, what I mean? Just flying through the air. It's incredible. Yeah, no, hopefully we can get back to that. There's actually a moment in the book where you talk about like the cruelty of the rims being removed from the backboards, because like the people in the nearby buildings complained, and that actually happened. I don't know if they did that in Bloomington, but they did that everywhere.
They took them off here. They put like tops on them.
No, they took them off completely here for months and months. They're back on now, and sometimes I'll still see people out there playing. But I miss it so, like, and I don't know, like when it's, I mean, Paige and I got our first vaccinations yesterday actually, and so I don't know, but I don't know when it's going to be okay to just like go to the gym and like get up against like, you know, 9 other sweaty strangers, you know what I mean, and just be like rubbing up on you know what I mean, like I
I know.
miss it.
Oh my God, it's
Yeah.
such a loss. It's such a loss. But yeah, but I'm glad that you put up a little hoop in your, see, that's the instant of flight right there. That's like, well, all right.
Yeah. Well, and Paige was really, I'm really dumb at like like that sort of like, so Paige was really the like engineer and I was sort of just like the muscle grunt behind it. But yeah, we got a hoop. So next time you come up to West Lafayette. We're at time. I'm sorry for the couple people who had questions, good, smart, wise questions that didn't get asked because I was talking about pickup, but hopefully in the fullness of
that was important.
it was. Hopefully in the fullness of time, our paths will all bend across again and you'll have the opportunity to ask Ross. Ross, thank you so much for this book.
Thank you.
Again, buy 50 copies for all your friends and enemies. Makes a great, today is Persian New Year, Nowruz. Makes a great Nowruz present if there are any Iranians in the audience. Makes a great, what other holiday is coming up? I don't even know. I don't know.
All the holidays.
Easter? I don't know when Easter is, but maybe makes a great Easter present. Makes a great just thing.
Oh, spring is coming. March 21st.
Spring is, well, yeah. That's Persian New Year's always starts on the first day of spring, which makes a lot more sense to me. Yeah. Thank you, Ross, so much. I'm supposed to read a thing. Outro script. It's time for us to wrap things up. Thanks, Ross, and to everyone who is watching. Please consider buying his featured book from your local independent bookseller or using the link provided. You can also check out all the other events in the all virtual 2021 Virginia Festival of the Book at vabook.org. Thank you so much, Ross.
Thank you. Good to see you.